And so I said, "Oh, really?" So where you stationed? And he says, first thing he says is Roswell, and I just for a joke, just not thinking that there would be anything going on with it. I said, "Oh, did you see it? Did you ever see any aliens?"
Alan, you are live on Marfugal TV. What's going on?
Hey, how's it going, Adam? Congratulations on your 100,000 subscribers.
Well, thank you so much, Alan. I appreciate that. So let's see. Right before you say anything, it says, "Oh, you had a Roswell patient, or somebody who says that they were." Go ahead. I won't ruin it for you.
I'll just run through the story for you. So I live here in Port Angeles. I was critical care nurse for 15 years. I was a nurse for 22 years. Worked night shift the entire time. So, one night about 4 or 5 years ago, I had this patient. He was in his mid to late 80s. Had a radical prostatectomy, was in a lot of pain, and he was down in critical care. So we had him on a monitor and all that kind of stuff. So I went in there to see him, and I was talking to him, and I could tell that he was in a lot of pain. So one of the things I like to do is get them talking about their past and all that kind of stuff. So I drew up some meds for him. I drew up a milligram of Ativan IV, which is a tranquilizer, basically, and 2 milligrams of morphine IV. And I gave that to him through his IV line. I started talking to him, and I always like to get them talking about their past and their life. And if they stop thinking about the pain, they start feeling better. So for some reason, older guys always like to talk about their military service and all that kind of stuff. And my dad was in the Air Force for 26 years, and so I lived on military bases. So I pretty well versed with what military life is like and all those kind of things. So I started talking to this guy, and I said, "Well, what'd you do for a living?" He said, "Oh, I was in the Air Force, actually the Army Air Corps." And for some reason, I don't know why he went all the way back to that, but like I said, I just given him this tranquilizer, this morphine. Real straight guy. And so he's starting to calm down. And I said, "Oh, really? Where were you stationed?" Because I figured, my dad was stationed all over the place. And I figured maybe there was something that would have been similar so that we could relate on. And he said, "Oh, I was stationed all over." He told me that he had been studying radar, and that's what my dad was in. He was in radar, started in the 50s. And so I said, "Oh, really?" So where were you stationed? And he says, first thing he says is Roswell, and I just for a joke, just not thinking that there would be anything going on with it. I said, "Oh, did you see it? Did you ever see any aliens?" And granted, take into account that this guy had been sedated, basically. And so he says, "Why, as a matter of fact, I did." And I was shocked. I said, "Oh my good Christ!" And I said, "Well, can you tell me about it?" And so I said, "Well, what'd they look like?" And so he kind of gave me that whole situation where he basically described a gray, about 4.5 feet tall. He said they had kind of flat features. He said he doesn't remember any nose or particular mouth. He said they had big eyes. He told me that they had their hands were kind of long, and that it seemed like they had an extra joint. He doesn't remember seeing anything that was genitalia or anything like that. He said there was 3 of them. 1 was alive, 2 were dead, and he claimed that he saw a craft on some sort of transport that was getting ready to go up to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And he said he was part of about 20 of these other guys. That there were different branches of the service back then. I don't think there was an Air Force. And as a matter of fact, it was the Army Air Corps, the Marines, and they were just, radar was just coming out. And so, kind of shocked listening to all that. And I said, "Well, so I asked him, he described the machine he said it was kind of saucer shaped, I don't know, 8-9 feet long, something like that. Anyway, they were getting ready to send it off. And so he said the 1 was alive, 2 were dead. And then he said, then I asked him, I said, "Well, what do you think they were doing with it?" And he said, "Well, they sent it up there to be back engineered." He said, "Why do you think all of a sudden we made all these inroads in the space program?" And I said, "Oh, it's, I said, holy shit." Excuse me. He said, "Oh," and he said, and I said, "Well, you think they'll ever tell us anything about it? He said, oh, no. They said they would disrupt society and religion and all this kind of stuff. And he said, they told us never to say a word about it. And some of those idiots said something, and they just disappeared. And then I swear to God, this look of absolute terror went across his face. And he walked over to his bed. He got in the bed. He turned to the wall, and he would not talk to me for the entire rest of the night. And then I could see later on that he was getting painful again, because I could see his heart rate going up on the monitor. His breathing was going up. And I'd go in there and say, Mr. whatever his name was, I said, do you want some more pain medication? He would not talk to me at all. In fact, I gave him some pain medication just because I knew he was painful, whether he was talking to me or not. For the rest of the night, he would not talk to me. And then, so later on, this was like 4 years ago, so about a year later, I'm laying on the couch and kind of halfway dozing in and out, and I hear one of those ancient alien things on TV just in the background. And I swear to God, I heard the same story again with just a little bit of changes to it. I flipped over and I said, oh, my God, is this the same guy? Turns out it was another guy, same kind of story with, the kind of differences you'd see with a person who had seen something from another angle, like he was part of a group of 15, 20 guys and seen all this stuff. And I thought that was coincidental enough. And then just about a year ago, I was out listening to the radio, and Coast to Coast came on, and there was this guy that came on talking about his dad, who was a Marine general who had been at Roswell. Same kind of a story, same exact thing with a few changes to it, except in his case, he said the live one somehow had telepathic contact with him. This was on Coast to Coast. Anyway, that's the story.
Wow.
And, I have to tend to believe the guy, because I'll never forget that look of terror that went right across his face. I mean, it was just like this wave, like it said, oh, yeah, those guys opened their mouth and they just disappeared. And he just like, uh-oh, I'm one of those guys.
Well, and you gave him a shot of painkiller, right? Or something. You basically...
I gave him 1 milligram of Ativan, which is a pretty heavy-duty tranquilizer, especially if you're 84 years old and never take anything, and 2 milligrams of IV morphine, all at one time. So that's quite a hit. I mean, it would knock me out.
And he just... The other day, Alan, I was on nitrous at the dentist, and I was just a goofball saying all sorts of stuff. And I actually grabbed my phone. They left me in the room on nitrous for 5, I don't know. It seemed like forever, but I was there for 5 minutes. Just, I couldn't even. I was I couldn't feel the nitrous, and I don't know if anybody else has had this experience. I didn't feel like it was on, and then because it kind of collectively goes in your lungs, you won't feel it 1 second, and then all of a sudden it's like it absorbed. And I was just, high as a kite on nitrous. And I told the dentist, I don't ever tell people I do YouTube. I was like, I'm on YouTube and blah, blah, blah. We're about to hit 100. And I talked to this guy, and I was just blabbing. And, but the fact that you shot him with morphine and Ativan, and then he tells you this story and then kind of comes off of his, high as a kite trip and then says, what the hell did I just do? That's pretty crazy. That was a great story.
Me, and I have to say, like I say, he was probably 84 at the time and in a lot of pain. And he was one of those straight arrow kind of, World War II generation, really straight, probably had the occasional drink, and that's about it, and he had absolutely no reason to lie. And then on top of that, hearing that story on one of those ancient alien things, and then like I say, just last year I heard the other story that was exactly the same story, except this guy had supposedly telepathic contact with one of the aliens, and this was what he told. This was a Marine general who, on his deathbed, told his son that story, and the son was telling Art, or whoever it was,
Art Bell,
or guy's name?
George Norrie.
George Norrie. He was telling the story on that. So it's like when you hear a story, they play that telegraph thing or whatever it is, where you have 3 people who see the same thing, and you get 3 different perspectives, but they're close enough where you can tell they're pretty similar. So anyway, it seems like I mean, if our government would be willing to lie to that level, it's kind of disturbing, actually. But I know the guy wasn't lying. He had absolutely no reason at all to lie to me about anything, because I didn't know him from Adam, and he wasn't very talkative in the first place. And then giving him all those drugs at the same time and being 84 years old, like you said, with that nitrous, it kind of loosens your lips. And I'll never forget that look of terror that went across his face. I mean, it was just like a shade going across. It's like all of a sudden he's like, "Oh, I'm one of those people." And he stumbled to his bed. He got into it. And he turned his face to the wall, and he would not talk to me at all for the rest of the night.
Wow, that is impressive. Alan, thank you so much for calling in.
You want to know what's going on? What's really going on when it happens? Go to marfugelnews.com and get Marfugel alerts along with a Discord invitation where you can find your local state group and get together with the Fugel fam. You'll find fast friends where you'll share prep and intel, and there's even special groups for former and current military. But don't try and steal the valor of those who have really served. It won't go well for you. The Marfugel fam is waiting for you.